What they do is several things. I mean, one of which is research. One of which is we have a specialized mental health clinic for children, adolescents, and adults who've been victims of traumatic events. The third is that we educate psychology interns, postdoctoral fellows, some psychiatry residents, some social work students, in terms of teaching them both about research and about performing clinical services with these parties who've been victims of traumatic events. We also do research as a part of our responsibilities.
All right. I want to go through a little bit about your background. I mean, I want to mark as Exhibit 301 your CV, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but your CV currently is 31 pages. Is that right?
That sounds about right.
Okay. In your CV, do you list the published peer review articles that you've written on this subject?
Yes.
How many peer review articles have you published in your field?
It's a little bit over 300.
And those peer review articles, are those the result and publication of research that you've conducted?
That's correct.
How many years have you been doing research on the effects of people undergoing traumatic events in their life?
50 plus.
Let's go through, just tell us some of your previous academic positions that you had before you have your current position.
Well, I've actually been at the Medical University of South Carolina my whole career since 1970. And I kind of went through the academic hierarchy in terms of doing that, and, started out as an instructor, and then was an associate, then was an assistant professor, then an associate professor, a full professor, and I believe 1979 was a full professor until 2005, I believe it was, when I was appointed as distinguished university professor.
Are you a member of any professional organizations?
A number of those, including the American Psychological Association, the International Society for Traumatic Stress Studies, and several others.
In your field, are the various professional peer-reviewed journals that are put out by these organizations that you're a member of?
Yes.
And are there individuals within the organization that are tasked with the responsibility to review the articles for, and what are you reviewing the article? Withdraw that. Are there individuals that are tasked with the responsibility of checking the articles and doing things related to the article before it's published?
Yes. Typically, most professional journals have an editor-in-chief and associate editors, and then reviewers who they assign to look at it, and then the editors look at the reviews and decide, what is fit to be published and what isn't, and what modifications people might need to make before their articles are published.
So is that what's called the peer review process?
Yes.
And the people that are conducting this peer review process, are they well known and well thought of in the field?
Well, yes, typically they have to have certain credentials. I mean, it's hard to review an article if you don't have the training and expertise to know whether it's up to snuff or not.
And have you served as one of the editors for various journals that peer reviews scientific medical literature in your field?
Yes. I mean, the main thing that I did was for 6 or 7 years, I was the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Traumatic Stress.
And what does that encompass?
Well, that's a peer-reviewed journal, which publishes scientific papers. And the editor-in-chief basically is responsible for the process of overseeing associate editors who in turn oversee reviewers who write critiques of articles and make recommendations about whether to publish the article or not and what kind of revisions might be needed. And in addition to being editor-in-chief, I myself actually served as the editor for many articles during that time.
Have you also served in state and local organizations in your field?
Yes, in the state of South Carolina, I served on the board of directors and was also president of the South Carolina Psychological Association. Nationally or internationally, I guess I was the president and served in other board capacities for the International Society of Traumatic Stress Studies.
How about national appointments? Have you ever received a national appointment?
I have. I was appointed by the Institute of Medicine, which is it's changed its name, but it was part of the National Academy of Sciences, to some committees that did studies of post-traumatic stress disorder and other matters. I was served on 3 of those committees over my career.
In the field of post-traumatic stress disorder and stress disorders, is there a handbook that is used in the industry that kind of is the guideline or the Bible for making these diagnoses?
Yes, the American Psychiatric Association has something that's called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which basically includes psychiatric diagnoses. All psychiatric diagnoses.
Tell us how that works. What is it called now? The DSM-5?
It's the DSM-5, which means it's the 5th revision or edition of that diagnostic manual. And how it works is that every 10 years or so, a huge committee gets together, appointed by the American Psychiatric Association, and appoints work groups and committees that study individual diagnoses and decide on revisions of those diagnoses for the new edition that's coming out.
And have you participated in those groups that make the recommendations and edit the manual?
I have. I participated in the DSM-4 revision, also the DSM-5 revision, and there's been recently a text revision, which means they don't really change the diagnoses that much, but sometimes they change the descriptions of what the criteria mean and try to help clinicians and researchers understand more about what the committee meant when it said such and such.
You used the term text revision. Is that why the DSM-4 or 5 is called now the DSM-5-TR?
Yes, that stands for text revision.
And in that book, when you open it up, what does it give you about post-traumatic stress disorder?
It really gives you a description of the actual criteria, which is how it's broken down, what the various symptoms are that comprise that, and then there's text that goes along with it, which tries to explain in more detail what we mean when we say a given symptom.
And in that DSM-5-TR, do they actually give the authorities in the bottom, the footnotes, for the actual criteria?
Yes.
And are you the one cited in the DSM, your publication on the criteria?
Well, yes, I mean, I was a member of the work group that put together and made recommendations, about the changes, and actually wrote some of that text. And they did cite some of our research that was done with the committee to study those changes and decide which ones were supported and which ones were not.
Continuing on with your background, have you been asked to come testify before government bodies about post-traumatic stress and assorted topics in that area?
Yes, I have testified both in the state of South Carolina, but also in terms of committees of the U.S. Senate, the U.S. House of Representatives.
The research that you do you personally do that as part of your job?
Yes, I'm, I guess, called sometimes a clinical scientist in that I'm clinically trained, but also do research. And again, our center, the National Center, does research on a variety of topics, and get peer-reviewed research grants to conduct research in the traumatic stress area.
And on that issue, the grants, could you explain that process, and who does a grant mean? Somebody funds research?
Yes, it typically means that that you submit an application to the part of the National Institutes of Health, or perhaps research arm of the Justice Department or the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention or other agencies. And you have to describe the type of research you want to do. You have to describe why it's important to do that research. That then is reviewed by peer review, which means you have experts in that field to take a look at your application and then make a determination about whether it should get funded or not.
And when who funds these grants?
Well, I mean, there are private foundations that fund things too, but a lot of times they're government agencies that have funding set aside to, with the idea of funding the most meritorious research that, not only is technically sound, but also is addressing issues, that are important for public health or criminal justice or other means.
Yeah, and in your resume, I'm not going to go through it, but there are 5 pages of grants that you've obtained and done research on. Does that sound about right?
It does.
And I see a lot of the research is done, it's called the VA research grant, and it has different numbers. So why would you do VA research? What does that mean?
Well, the VA, I'm sorry I left out, the Veterans Administration obviously funds a lot of research as well. And the reason they do is because one of the big parts of the VA is the VA healthcare system. And basically when you have instances of war and things like that, that is many people who serve our nation in combat situations sustain psychological injuries sometimes, as well as physical injuries. So the VA has a big stake in knowing more about post-traumatic stress disorder and related disorders, including, how do you diagnose and treat people successfully, who have those problems.
All right, without going into all the papers, what are the areas that you published the papers on that would be appropriate and related to this case and the work you've done?
Well, I think generally knowing about ways to assess people and find out how many potentially and what type of potentially traumatic events they've been exposed to, and then what are some of the mental health consequences of exposure, such as post-traumatic stress disorder, sometimes depression. Many people have after exposure to a traumatic stress experience. And then also things like suicide. I mean, there's a lot of research that indicates that people who have been exposed to potentially traumatic events, some of them develop thoughts of suicide. Some of them, unfortunately, actually make suicide attempts. Substance use problems are something that comes up that's at higher risk. So a lot of my research has been looking at different populations, screening them to find out if they have these problems, and then trying to find out what predicts who has the problems versus who doesn't have the problems. And then, specific to this case, my colleagues and I have done a lot of research looking at the effects of violent deaths, which include murder, criminal homicide, and also include things like vehicular crash deaths, and particularly if those deaths involve some type of impairment due to alcohol or drug use on behalf of drivers.
Why did you study the effects on an individual that is seen part of a collision where someone is killed relating to impairment of drivers, alcohol, or drugs?
Well, one of the reasons is that there are a lot of those that happen every year in the United States, and there are a lot of people within the United States who've had that happen, that experience sometime during their lifetime. And so how we specifically got involved was that we were very interested in what happens to people after criminal homicide. I mean, in other words, someone's murdered and then they leave behind a family, they leave behind friends, and some notion that was upsetting to people, which I don't think would be a surprise to anyone. But it was a bit of a surprise when when I particularly was working with someone who was about to undergo a criminal trial in which his wife, his 10-year-old son, and his wife's 68-year-old father had been killed in front of him, and he was going to be a surviving witness in a trial. And our office got a referral from the Attorney General of the state of South Carolina that was going to be trying this case, and asked us to try to help him deal with the stress of the trial. And we were struck that in addition to having depression and kind of grief symptoms, had a lot of PTSD symptoms. And so that hadn't been talked about a lot. So we got involved in doing a study that was trying to find out how often does this happen, and is PTSD a problem that occurs in that situation.
And how many years have you been studying that for?
Well, I think that started in 1987, so I guess that's been a long time.
Okay. I'm going to come back to the papers, but have you also published books and chapters in books on this subject?
Had chapters in books, yes. I really haven't been an author very often of whole books, but certainly chapters in books that deal with it.
How many?
Oh, I should say too. I'm sorry that in addition to that, we subsequently got interested in terrorism and mass violence. So some terrorism is mass violence, but and so as a part of our National Mass Violence Center, one of the things that we do is that we try to understand what happens to communities after mass violence and what happens to people who've been directly affected by mass violence. And we've done research on that, looking at some of the mental health effects.
How many of these book chapters have you done?
Probably 60 or 70.
Let's go back to the beginning about post-traumatic stress disorder. How did that, I don't know if the word discover is the right word, but how is it that it came to the forefront in the medical community that such a thing even existed?
Well, I think I did write a chapter on the history of that, so I won't go back really past 1980, but in 1980, there was kind of a confluence of events that happened that led people to be interested in that. One of the big ones was the Vietnam War, which stirred up a lot of controversy, and a lot of people were very concerned that people were coming back from that war with a lot of problems. And I can tell you, because I was alive, I was practicing then, and I worked at the VA for a while, and people would come back and the problems they were having did not fit the diagnostic categories that we had at the time, and everybody was trying to figure that out. So there was a movement to get something about that in the DSM. There was also people who worked with rape victims and battered women and abused children who were noticing problems that they were having. So anyway, a lot of people got together, presented things to the committee that was putting together the DSM-3, and they decided in 1980 to put PTSD in the DSM. And after that happened, there was kind of a common way of looking at problems experienced by war veterans, battered women, burn victims, natural disaster victims, rape victims, etc. And so that stimulated a lot of clinical work and a lot of research trying to find out more about this newly named disorder.
So, but there were many wars before Vietnam, World War II, World War I, all the way back to the Civil War. Was any of this studied or recognized before 1980?
It was recognized, but what would happen is, they talk about railway spine, for example. There were train wrecks, and so people came up with something for that. And, they talked about things in the Civil War, and they talked about things, throughout history, but it never stuck. And then for some reason, in the 70s, I guess the political winds were right, and so it became an official diagnosis for the first time, and actually, as I say, did stimulate a lot of research as well as clinical work.
When you got did you receive a grant from the Department of Justice, National Institute of Justice, and work on a survey of research in this area?
We did. We've gotten a couple of things from the various parts of the Department of Justice. But one of the studies that we did was what we call the National Homicide Study, and it basically involves screening 12,500 adults from all over the United States about whether they had ever suffered the loss of a family member or close friend to either criminal homicide, murder, or alcohol-related vehicular homicide, where there's an impaired driver who kills a family member or close friend. And then we followed up on those and found out what percentage of them had post-traumatic stress disorder. And we found that actually there was no difference between the percentage of people who develop post-traumatic stress disorder after a criminal homicide or murder or after an alcohol-related vehicular homicide.
How long did it take to do that research?
I think that took us about 2 years to do that.
Was that published?
There are 2 or 3 papers from that, yes.
And what were the major findings of your research at that time?
Well, one of the main findings was that about 9% of or really between 9 and 10%, if I recall correctly, of the U.S. population, of adults in the U.S. population had lost someone to either one or the other of those types of violent deaths. And then it turned out that a pretty high percentage of them who'd experienced that developed post-traumatic stress disorder. And as I recall, about 4 or 5% still had post-traumatic stress disorder. And again, this was just people out living in the community. This was not people who were in mental health centers or seeking help. And another thing that we found was that, and this was somewhat of a surprise, that you did not have to actually be present when the event was happening. You didn't have to witness it happening. That if you learned about it, that was sufficient in many people to result in post-traumatic stress disorder.
Have you done subsequent research studies involving PTSD for the same type of violent deaths of family members, murder, impaired driving, or mass attacks?
We have, in that once we found out that was a pretty significant risk factor, we typically have included some questions in our studies to find out if that's ever happened to you. So whatever other studies we're doing, we also include that. And then with our National Mass Violence Center, we have more recently have done a considerable amount of research that looks at particularly the people who've been victims of mass violence or who live in communities where mass violence has happened.
What have the results of these subsequent research confirmed or not confirmed regarding your opinions of people dying and family members of violent death, mass murder, criminal homicide, driving while impaired?
Well, I think what we found is we basically have confirmed that that's a major risk factor for post-traumatic stress disorder and related disorders.
Right. We've thrown out this. I keep looking for you over here. You're not there. We've talked of this term PTSD. So let's dive into that. What is PTSD?
All right. Well, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. It basically is almost like a Chinese menu version of things where first of all, you have to have an experience or potentially traumatic event that sort of is included in whatever version of the DSM you're looking at. I mean, so for DSM-5, it involves things that, it's either physical, physical injury. I mean, if you're physically injured by a number of things, which could be natural disasters, it could be crimes, it could be terrorist attacks, it could be sexual violence, it could be any number of things like that. And then you're evaluated for various kinds of symptoms that you may have, and there are 20 symptoms of PTSD that fall into basically 4 different categories. And the categories are that you're kind of re-experiencing the potentially traumatic event, in that you could have unwanted memories of it, you could have nightmares, you could have flashbacks, you could get very emotionally distressed if you encounter something that reminds you of that traumatic event, or you could have physical symptoms after you get exposed to something that reminds you of that traumatic event. Another category is basically that you are avoiding things that remind you of the traumatic event. Another category is that you have negative changes in your thoughts or feelings that either began or worsened after you were exposed to a potentially traumatic event. Another category is that you have changes in your thoughts and beliefs about and feelings that either start or get worse after you've been exposed to the traumatic event. And then the final group of symptoms is basically that there's arousal and reactivity that begin or get worse afterwards. What do I mean by that? Well, people with PTSD often have irritable or aggressive behavior. They sometimes engage in reckless or self-destructive behavior. They're on guard all the time for danger, and so they're, it's called hypervigilance. So you're scanning the environment all the time for a dangerous situation. You may have a very exaggerated startle response. So your phone rings and you jump, or a book falls down and a loud noise that's unexpected, and so you get very jacked up when that happens. You also can have a lot of difficulty concentrating because your mind's on other things, and so you have trouble focusing in on something. And then a lot of times you have sleep disturbances. Either you have trouble getting to sleep, you have trouble staying asleep, or you can get very restless. So in other words, you have to have a certain number of symptoms in each of those four categories to qualify. And then also, it must affect your life in some other way. So for example, it may be just very distressing to you having all these symptoms, or it can basically cause some clinically significant impairment in your functioning, in your social functioning, in your on your job if you have that in school, if you're in school, or other areas, just taking care of your regular life. So in other words, it's not just having these symptoms, it has to have an impact on other behavioral aspects of your life as well.
Okay, in this case, did I ask you to assess Nancy Iskander and Kareem Iskander?
Yes.
Have you ever worked for me since 1990?
No.
I want to mark, okay, so let's just talk about how would you go about assessing, and are you providing treatment to the plaintiffs?
No.
And what is your role here?
My role was to basically review documents, evaluate them, and be prepared to give professional opinions based on those factors.
And have you written reports that document the findings for both Mr. Iskander and Miss Iskander? Mrs. Iskander?
Yes.
So when you get an assignment like this, what is the methodology that you follow? Is it scientific? How you do it? What do you do?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I do is that I do review, documents if there have been depositions or testimony or something like that. I will look at that. I will also conduct an evaluation, and that evaluation consists of, generally a standardized procedure that I go through, which involves collecting some systematic information from the person. And what do I mean by that? Well, one of the things that involves is getting a careful evaluation of the extent to which they've been exposed to potentially traumatic events during their lives. And, one of the things the research shows is that most people in the general population have been exposed to some type of traumatic event, and often people have been exposed to more than one. So it's important for us to get information about the things that they've been exposed to. The way we do that, by the way, is that we have developed, you had asked me before about my participation in some of the committees and work groups in the DSM about revising the PTSD diagnosis. So as a part of that, we developed some tools that involved standardized assessment to get information about any traumatic events that people have been through previously. So in other words, we use that tool in order to get a history on somebody about not only the current thing that we're interested in, but also any previous traumatic events that they may have had. Then what I typically do is to get some information, standardized information about post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms that people may have, and then the extent to which that has impacted their ability to, their functioning. As I mentioned before, their social relationships, their family relationships, their work and school, if they're in school, that would be another area that we would look at. And then just the ability to take care of yourself in your day-to-day life. And then what I do is I usually do a personal interview with people that takes a look at all of this other stuff in addition to the evaluation information that I was mentioning just a minute ago. And then try to answer whatever questions are posed by whoever has retained me about that.
And did you do that for both Mr. and Mrs. Iskander?
Yes.
And did people that work with you assist you in doing that?
Yes. My assistant, who's been with me not 50 years, but a lot of years, Vicki Cornelison she's a senior staff person here at our center, and I usually involve her in terms of collecting some of this information.
And you're in Charleston, South Carolina, and do you know where the plaintiffs, where they live?
I think it is Natick, Massachusetts, which is near Boston.
And did you see them in person, video? How did you do the interviews?
I did not. Sometimes people do come to Charleston to do the evaluation. Occasionally I will go where they are. But after the pandemic in particular, we've gotten better about virtual assessments and meetings. And so this was done remotely.
And did you get the information that you needed?
Yes.
And is that now standard of practice in the medical industry that you can do evaluations via Zoom or Teams or something like that?
Yes.
Okay. So first I want to talk about Nancy Iskander. And let's go to the end. What do you believe? What is your opinion about what conditions or no conditions did she develop as a result of being there when her sons were both killed on September 29th, 2020?
Well, I think from a sort of diagnostic symptom standpoint, I think there are three major things. One of which is she clearly has post-traumatic stress disorder of a serious nature in response to the violent deaths of her two sons. And second, she has depression that is so kind of moderate or mild, I would say, by a standard measure of that we use. Although I'm not sure that quite captures how depressed I think she is, because during the interview she was very, very tearful. I mean, it was very upsetting to talk about these things with me or anybody, but she seems very sad, and also reports a couple of symptoms that in terms of thinking about suicide and thinking that she would be better off dead, which is concerning and would be even more concerning, except that I believe she has a strong religious belief, and that her Coptic Christian church takes a very dim view of suicide. I mean, that would be true, I think, of most religious organizations, but that is particularly true of her church. And so I think she's also very conscientious and wishes to, take care of her family as best she can. And so it's troublesome that somebody feels that way. You always worry about it a little bit, or a lot sometimes, but I think that strong religious belief helps in terms of that she won't act out on those thoughts. The third thing she has is that there's something which is a new diagnosis, didn't come into the DSM until 2022, called prolonged grief disorder. I think she has that as well, which is not just regular grief, it's grief that's persisted a long time and doesn't seem to be getting any better. But I think those are kind of three things. And suicide, if you want to split it out, would be actually four things that are problematic from a diagnostic point of view.
So I want to show Mark Exhibit 301, 210 to 216. And what this is, the DSM, criteria. More. Okay. And what I've done is I've just taken this out of your report in CV, just the criteria, nothing else. Okay.
Right.
So this says the criteria, DSM-5, and so let's go to the next page. That would be 212. And this starts off, and you kind of summarize this for us, but why don't you just explain DSM-5 criteria A, criterion A for PTSD, and whether or not, in your opinion, Mrs. Iskander meets the requirements.
Yes, the criterion A is the one that says, all right, what kind of events qualify to evaluate you as having PTSD? So these things would all be capable of producing PTSD. They don't in every case, but they're capable of doing it. And as it says, I mean, the person was exposed to death, threatened death, actual or threatened serious injury, or actual or threatened sexual violence. And, there are four different ways you can experience those. One is directly, meaning it happens to you. Secondly, you can witnessing it happen to someone else. Thirdly, you can learn that it happened to a close relative or close friend. And then the fourth category is indirect exposure to aversive details of the trauma, usually in the course of professional activities. meaning that there were a lot of people who basically see pictures of things. I mean, there may be drone operators in the military, for example, who are guiding a drone that goes and kills or injures people. It may be that you're a professional who's looking at child pornography. I mean, as a part of you're a police officer or something. In any case, in her case, she had direct exposure to threatened death, and then she, barely was able to take her, to save one of her sons by diving out of the way and almost getting hit by a speeding vehicle. She obviously witnessed the aftermath of the traumatic event that happened, and I mean, she didn't have to learn about it because she was present there. So she clearly qualified for those criteria.
Okay, let's go to the next page. That's page number 201. 201 dash.
213.
213. Sorry.
Right.
Okay. Now this is a separate criterion, correct?
That is correct.
So first, before you get to B, you have to satisfy A. Is that right?
That's true.
Okay. So tell us about B, criterion B for post-traumatic stress disorder, and whether Nancy Iskander meets the requirements.
All right. So what B is that you have to re-experience that traumatic event in certain ways. And you have to have at least one of these. So one is unwanted, upsetting memories about the traumatic event. The second is nightmares about it. The third is having flashbacks about it, which is flashbacks are where you get a visual image of that, or it doesn't have to be visual. Sometimes it could be a smell or something like that. And then another symptom is that you have to have emotional distress after you're exposed or when you're exposed to traumatic reminders. I mean, something that reminds you of the event that happened, and you get very, emotionally upset when that happens. And then the other aspect of that is having physical reactions, like your mouth gets dry, your heart beats fast, you may get sweaty, you may have, physiological reactions when something reminds you of that traumatic event. So she had every single one of those symptoms. You don't need to have but one. So she's having a lot of re-experiencing trauma, and she would therefore meet that criterion B.
Okay, let's go to C. Now, you just need one. We got to go back one more because C's on the bottom. Go back one slide, please. Okay, well, we haven't have we done C yet?
We have not.
Okay, so tell us about criterion C on exhibit 301-212.
All right. One of the things that is just characteristic of PTSD is that, and it's a characteristic human response, is that when something is very traumatic and fearful creates a lot of fear in us, is that what we have a strong tendency to do is to try to avoid anything that reminds us of that, or that has, evokes that fear. So this criterion is avoiding of trauma-related stimuli after the trauma in one of these two ways. I mean, one is that you avoid thoughts or feelings about the traumatic event. I want to stay about that. I want to stay away from that. I don't want to have those feelings. I'm going to do everything that I can to avoid those because they make me feel very bad. So that's one of the two ways. The other two, other way is basically that you really try to stay away from anything that reminds you. I mean, a place, a person, anything, any other kind of stimuli that just makes you think about this traumatic event that you experienced.
All right, so she's met both criteria, even though you only need one for criteria C.
I will say that actually she did not endorse the trauma-related thoughts or feelings, but she did endorse the trauma-related reminders. So she had to have one of those, and out of the two, and she did have the second one out of the two.
Yeah.
So she met that criteria.
While we're doing that, I'm going to mark Exhibit 301, 150 to 156. This is your expert witness report that you prepare in this case, and I'll get to that. So let's go now to the next page of this exhibit, which is page number 214, 301-214, criterion D. Could you explain that to us and whether or not, in your opinion, Mrs. Iskander meets the criterion?
All right, this is criterion C, which is negative changes in thoughts or feelings that either began or worsened after the traumatic event. And you have to have at least two of these, to qualify. The first is the inability to remember some key features of the traumatic event. She did not have that symptom. But the next one is overly negative thoughts and assumptions about yourself or the world. So it just changes your belief system in some ways about the world and self-blame. And the third one is exaggerated blame of self or others for causing the trauma. The fourth one is negative affect, and what affect means is symptoms, or feelings, basically, that you just have a lot of negative feelings in general. Another one is decreased interest in activities that you used to enjoy beforehand, and now you find that you're just not very interested in much of anything. Another symptom is feeling isolated. It's very hard for you to be close to other people. Feel very different from other people. And then a final one, which, and by the way, this was a new addition in DSM-5, is that it's not just that you have a lot of negative emotions. You have trouble with positive emotions, so you don't feel very satisfied. You basically don't have much in the way of positivity about you at all. So she had there were two that she did not have. Two of these that she did not have. As I say, she did not have the inability to remember key features of the traumatic event. She remembers what happened incredibly well and often. And then the other one that she was negative on is that she did not describe much in the way of decreased interest in activities.
Okay, so of the 7, you need 2 or more. She has 5.
That's correct.
Okay, let's go to the next page. We're still going through it. And now we're on 301-215, criterion E. Explain it and tell us which one she has or doesn't have, please.
All right. These things are evidence that your nervous system is sort of jacked up and you have arousal and reactivity that began or worsened after the traumatic event, and you have to have at least 2 of these. One is irritable or aggressive behavior, and by that I mean you're not just feeling angry or irritable, is that you really have to be acting out on that. So people, sometimes get in fights, they get, with other people, they destroy things, they, or actually that's the next one. But it's that irritability and anger really is having an effect on your behavior. It's not just feeling irritable, it's just, or angry, it's actually acting out on that.
And let me ask you this. Would coming face to face with the person who you believe was the cause of the events, would that trigger this irritable or aggressive behavior?
Well, it would certainly be something that would remind you of the traumatic event, and so it's related to that. And if the content of that, yes, it would. I mean, so that would be a normal example of that. It's not just limited to that, though. It might be that it's not just that person. It might be, just daily life. I mean, there's a lot of things that many of us find annoying about daily life or irritable about daily life. But sometimes if you have PTSD, you can't stifle that, and it spills out into your behavior.
Okay.
The next.
Go ahead. Sorry.
All right. The next symptom is reckless or self-destructive behavior, and sometimes people with PTSD have this thing. I mean, they may drive too fast. They may, get into fights with other people. They may, self-medicate with alcohol or drugs in order to help deal with that. But in other words, a lot of times they may not take good care of themselves in terms of exercise or diet. They may do a lot of things that basically are sort of reckless and self-destructive. The next one is hypervigilance. I had mentioned that previously, that basically a lot of times if you've had PTSD, you have learned that the world is not a safe place. And so you are always scanning the environment for danger, and that can be a problem in the sense that our bodies are not built to be on guard all the time. It takes a lot of energy to be able to maintain that vigilance and looking for danger. So anyway, but hypervigilance is a very common PTSD symptom. Also, people have this heightened startle reaction. I mean, which is sort of physiologically, it's like if you're keyed up all the time, if you're looking for danger all the time, then when there's a loud noise or something like that, some Vietnam veterans and veterans of other wars, I mean, a loud noise car will backfire, or you'll drop a book on the floor, or even the phone rings, and all of a sudden they drop down on the floor because they're so concerned, that may be danger. The concentration symptom is a very common one that people will talk about. Well, I just read the same paragraph 4 times, and I can't tell you anything that's in it. I can't really pay attention to what people are saying necessarily because I'm just having trouble focusing on things. And then I already described before the difficulty sleeping, that's a common feature. So she basically had, she actually had all of those, she did not have the irritable or aggressive behavior, and she did not have the reckless or self-destructive behavior, but she had all the rest. So she had to have 2, but she had 4.
Okay. I'm going to stop, I think, right now, take a break, and then we'll get back to the next slide. Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
You want to talk about case amongst yourself or with anyone else? We'll see that.
Yes, thank you. Let's go to the next slide, 301-216. We've covered that slide, correct, Doctor?
That's correct.
Okay, so let's go to the next one. And we have criterion F, G, and H. Why don't you just walk us through that quickly?
All right, criterion F means that you must have the symptoms must last for more than 1 month. And I mean, one of the things about that is you cannot diagnose PTSD officially until at least a month after the traumatic event occurred, because they have to have the symptoms at least a month. Criterion G says, and I alluded to this before, but that the symptoms, if you have enough PTSD symptoms to kind of meet the diagnostic criteria that we just went through, those symptoms must also create clinically significant distress, meaning that if you have those symptoms, you have to be very, very distressed about having them all, or I guess it would be or you have to have some functional impairment in your social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. So you have the symptoms and it causes problems in these other areas of your life. And then criterion H just says that the symptoms are not due to medication, substance use, or other illness. So, that typically is not the case that you rule people out because of that, but occasionally you might be able to. In her case, she has had the symptoms for a very long time, and so she meets the criterion F. It is clear that these symptoms are creating clinically important distress or significant distress and the functional impairment in various other aspects of her life. And there's no evidence that the symptoms are related to medication, substance use, or any type of other illness.
In your opinion, based on meeting 15 of the 20 PTSD symptoms and criteria in the DSM-5, do you have an opinion as to whether or not, as a result of being present in the death of her 2 sons, that Nancy Iskander has post-traumatic stress disorder?
There is no question whatsoever. She does have post-traumatic stress disorder.
And do you categorize, I know earlier you said there's mild, moderate, and depression. We'll talk about that. But in the area of a post-traumatic stress disorder diagnosis or finding, is there ways that you categorize it, like mild, moderate, severe, like that?
Well, I mean, that is not, not part of the diagnosis per se, but one of the things that we do and the measure that I was describing that we use to collect this information is that if they've had the symptoms within the last month, which all of the symptoms that I've talked about her having, she had those symptoms in the last month, which is a good measure of sort of having current problems. We asked them, how problematic that was for you to have those. And in every case, she picked the extremely problematic reactions. So, she not only has these symptoms, but she has them at a pretty high level of being disturbing and being problematic.
And is there a term in medicine, something is intermittent or chronic?
Well, there is, and while it is not attached necessarily specifically to this diagnosis, I would say that, she has literally had these symptoms, and they may, some of them may get a little better from time to time, they may not, but that she basically has been, symptomatic for 5+ years at this point. And so that's pretty chronic. And from some of the studies that have been done, most of the time, if people are going to improve without treatment from a potentially traumatic event and having PTSD, they will do so, pretty early on, usually between, 1 and 3 months, or let me rephrase that. Between 1 and 3 months after a traumatic event happens, there are people who have a lot of symptoms right away, and then a lot of them will get better, within 1 to 3 months afterwards. After the 3-month period, you rarely see much improvement unless they get effective mental health treatment.
Now, speaking of that, did Ms. Iskander seek some treatment?
She had 2 or 3, I think, episodes of sort of brief, I would say more assessment and then maybe attempts to treat. But in my interview with her, she indicated that she did not find those treatment attempts very successful. She had some treatment, but kind of almost by definition, the fact that she still has the problem suggests that those treatment effects were not overly effective. And she, her perception was it was not very effective.
What is the prognosis for Nancy Iskander as relates to the post-traumatic stress disorder diagnosis? Oh yeah, you can take that exhibit down. Thank you. In my professional opinion, her prognosis, unless she gets effective treatment, is that there will be very little, if any, change in terms of her current condition. The fact that she's now more than 5.5 years later, does that have any bearing on your opinion of how the future will be for her?
It does. As I mentioned, the evidence is pretty clear that most people do not spontaneously get a lot better if they have had symptoms for this long after a traumatic event like this occurs.
So if you have the best doctors and the best treatment, is there any guarantee she's going to get better?
There are a couple of issues involved in that. If you talk about PTSD treatments that have shown some safety, and have shown both safety and effectiveness in terms of helping, then there's some considerations. One of which is that you have to connect up with a therapist who is very skilled and who is knowledgeable about those effective treatments. And they have to have a good relationship with the person being treated. And secondly, there are some medication treatments. The evidence is not quite as good for them as it is for some of the cognitive behavioral treatments that are ones that have the most effectiveness. But she is trained in, she's a trained pharmacist and knows psychopharmacology and knows about side effects of some of the medications that are used for treatment, and is not a big believer in medication. And so, I think it would be pretty hard to convince her to take a psychotropic medication for treatment. So that kind of rules that out. For the psychological treatments or the cognitive behavioral treatments, she would have to find someone who knows about those treatments and knows how to use them and is able to establish a good rapport and a good working relationship with someone. And that's not necessarily easy. So, I mean, in some ways, and her belief is that what has happened to her is so bad that nobody can really can really understand her, and nobody is able to help her with what happened, because what happened was so bad that there's just no way to undo it. And I agree with her that there's no way to undo what happened to her. I do think that there's a chance that she could find someone who would be able to use an effective treatment with her and make her better. But I think there's no going back to what she was like before this happened.
Okay, well, you talked about the depression related to the PTSD. Did you give any testing or conduct any testing that relates to depression?
We did. We gave her a commonly used test, which is the Beck Depression Inventory, the second version of that. And that measures symptoms of depression. I believe it's got 21 items, and it measures depression symptoms that you've had within the last 2 weeks.
And what did you find?
What we found is that was a little surprising to me, is that she scored in the range of having a sort of minor depression, which is, or mild depression, not minor. And that, I mean, her behavior during the interview, I think was more indicative of depression than that test score would indicate. So I was a little surprised that she only scored as mild. But as I said, she also endorsed on that scale as well some things about wanting to be dead and considering suicide. She indicated that she had no, as she told me in the interview, that she had no plans to actually act out on that and make a suicide attempt. But in other words, she scored as having mild depression. But she looked in the interview like I was surprised that she didn't score higher on that test.
When you combine post-traumatic stress with depression, does that exacerbate the conditions more than one?
I would say yes. I mean, it is not uncommon for people with PTSD to also have depression. I mean, that's a common thing to happen. But I mean, obviously, the more disorders you have, the more complicated it is, and the more difficult it is for you.
You mentioned also that she met the DSM criteria for prolonged grief disorder, and we're only talking about that related to her being there seeing it. You understand that?
I do.
You understand that in this case, in a wrongful death case, setting aside her own claim, that the plaintiffs cannot recover grief or sorrow in California. You're aware of that?
I think I am.
Okay. So the grief, what's called prolonged grieving disorder, as it relates to the post-traumatic stress disorder and the loss of the children, please explain how that occurs.
Well, let me do that from the framework of the PTSD diagnosis. Maybe that will be helpful. For PTSD, one change, when the revision happened and it became DSM-5 as opposed to DSM-4, is it basically said that if it was kind of a normal death, it was not a violent death, that you would not be eligible to have post-traumatic stress disorder. So teasing apart what the cause of the death was in this case, but it was not, any kind of death of a child is sort of terrible and would be expected to produce some sort of grief. Now, most of the time people's grief gets better over some period of time. In her case, it really hasn't, and that's one of the things about the prolonged grief disorder that distinguishes it. But teasing apart, the way that these children died and how they died, and the fact that she saw it and saw the aftermath of it, and was deprived of the children, means that the fact that she has the grief disorder doesn't really, it's not necessary to account for the PTSD problems, the depression problems that she has.
I want to now, have you told us all your opinions about Nancy Iskander?
I'm sorry.
Have you told us all your opinions about Nancy Iskander?
Well, I have one more opinion about her, is that she is a very strong, resilient, impressive woman and human being and mother, in that what happened to her was awful. And notwithstanding the fact that she feels that a part of her has died, an important part of her has died, and that her life will never be the same, the fact that she's intelligent, that she is has a great deal of integrity, has a strong religious belief system, has enabled her to keep going through life with great difficulty. And so I'm impressed with the fact that things could be a lot worse if she didn't have these positive resiliency factors.
Now, I want to just briefly talk about Mr. Iskander. Did you do the same process with him?
Yes.
Okay. Let's just put aside the post-traumatic stress disorder for him. We're only going to talk about his wrongful death claim, his loss of the love, care, comfort, society, affection of his children that were killed. Okay? So put aside grief, put aside post-traumatic stress disorder, and I know you have opinions about that, but we're not going to talk about that. Let's just talk about what was the effect that you saw when you discussed with him. I'll withdraw the question. Could you assess the loss that he suffered of the love, care, comfort, society, affection of his son, two sons, and whether that was just a little bit, a lot, or how would you assess his loss on those issues only?
All right. One thing that was extremely clear is that, and not just from his take on it, but that of his wife and evidently lots of other people. Mark and Jacob were amazing young human beings who, and I guess all parents, and I'm a parent myself and a grandfather, probably idealize their own children and grandchildren to some extent. But it sounds as if to me that the evidence would support the fact that these were pretty amazing children. And that they were an incredibly important part of his life. And what do I mean by that? I mean that he described a lot of times about how they made him feel better about things when he was down a little bit, that he was so excited about all of the skills and promise that they had and the accomplishments, and they just made him feel better, and they made him feel more confident, and he was looking forward to sharing in their successes, not just as children, but throughout their lives together. And so I think when they were their lives were extinguished in such a dramatic and sudden way, he lost a lot. In terms of his how he felt about himself, how he looked forward to the future, how he looked forward to sharing in their successes, and just being around them made his life better. And so he, in an interesting way, I mean, a lot of times we think about parents as being sources of social support for their children. But I think those children were a source of social support, happiness, well-being, positive view of the future, etc., for him. And so he lost a lot when he lost those children.
And could you tell, interviewing about the degree of the love, affection, society, comfort that he received from his children?
It was striking. I mean, in the sense that it seemed above and beyond that which you see a lot of times in people.
Okay, did I ask you all your opinions so that we're covering here today?
Well, I would add that just as I said, about Nancy, I would say about him that without getting into any details, this has been this process has been a difficult one for him since losing those children to their very violent deaths. But he is a strong individual too. He has strong religious beliefs, and even though it's been difficult for him, I just think I'm impressed with his strengths and resilience.
Okay, thank you, Maurice. What are all your opinions to a reasonable degree of medical probability?
Well, I would say clinical, psychological, yes, but.
Fair enough. And by the way, are you a medical doctor?
No, I'm a PhD, but I am a clinical psychologist, and I'm licensed to practice in the state of South Carolina.
Okay, thank you very much. You want to come over here?
That's probably best to use the book.
I have no questions.
Questions for the jury? So, all right. Okay,
All right, Bob,
Doctor.
good to see you. Maybe I'll see you sometime. Thank you.
All right, let me see, Council Sept.
Yes.
Your Honor, the plaintiff's called Pamela Curry by video. Your Honor, you can switch the audio.
Not a fair way to start. All right, let's move beyond that frame.
Ms. Curry, can you please state and spell your full legal name for the record?
It's Pamela Marie Curry, Pamela Marie, Marie, Curry, Curry.
And at the time of the collision, where did you live?
Agora Hills.
Agora Hills. And how long did you live in Agora Hills before you moved?
I think about 2 years.
2 years, okay. And how far is Agora Hills from the intersection where you heard the sounds that you heard related to the crash?
It's probably 5 or 6 miles.
Okay, great. And going back to the time of the collision, how often did you go to that area?
I would go after dinner. I would go during the day. Being summer, I probably went once or twice a week, and being that it was COVID, it was a place to be outside amongst people as closely as you could get.
Okay, so would you say you're very familiar with that area?
I would say I'm familiar with it. I wouldn't say very, but I'm familiar with it, yeah.
Okay, and I think you testified, I'm sorry, maybe I misheard you. How many times a week did you go to that particular?
Maybe once or twice a week because it was summer.
And going back to the date of the accident, I understand you testified that you first heard loud noises, revving cars, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, and was that your first awareness that something was going on that was related to the collision?
well, it was prior to the collision, so yes.
Okay, great. And just your best estimate of time, do you know about what time that was?
It was before 7 o'clock. It was right after dinner. So I ate dinner and drove out there and went for a walk around the lake.
I see, okay, so what you had done was you went to park there, COVID time, and then you went to go have a walk, a stroll in the area, correct?
Yeah, around the lake.
Okay, and then you were walking back when you first heard the sounds, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you first got to that area and you parked your car, about what time was that?
It was probably around 6.
Around 6. Okay, so you had been walking for almost an hour, is that true?
You mean from when I parked my car to when I got back to my car?
More from when you parked your car to when the time you first heard the noises.
Yeah, because I went all the way around the lake and back. So maybe about an hour, probably less. It was crowded and a lot of people weren't wearing their masks, and I got concerned about that. So I walked probably 3/4 and then started heading back to my car.
Okay. And were you by yourself at that time?
Yes,
Okay, the entire time?
yes.
Okay. And at that time, were you wearing your glasses?
No,
No? Did you have contacts on?
no, I don't need them all the time. I need them to see on the computer.
Understood. Okay. So your driver's license doesn't have any restrictions?
No,
I see. Okay. All right. And your hearing, did any doctor ever tell you have problems with hearing?
no.
And going back again to the time that you first heard that noise, you said it was it before 7 o'clock?
I think it was.
Okay. So you first heard the noise before 7 o'clock, and then going back to that moment, can you tell us what you did or what?
I was walking back towards my car. I had just passed the rec center, and I was walking on the sidewalk, and 2 women were coming the opposite direction without masks on. And a lot of people don't wear masks out there, so I hopped into the bike lane while they passed me. And when I hopped into the bike lane, that's when I first heard the sounds of cars, engines revving. So, and another way to say that is cars, the sounds of cars racing, which is very common out there, particularly during COVID, because teenagers had nothing else to do, and it's all of the different canyons, it's very, very common. So I heard it coming towards me, and one car passed me.
Okay, 1 second, and this is the details that I want to get at.
Sure.
So you first heard the noise, and then you just mentioned one car came past you.
Yes,
So, that first car that came past you, from the moment you first heard it to the time it came past you, about how much time elapsed? Your best estimate.
probably seconds.
Seconds, okay, like 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, 5 seconds, just whatever you can estimate, your best estimate, based upon your recollection. 5 seconds, okay. So you heard the sound approximately 5 seconds and it came past you. Correct? Is that correct? Sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry, I said, yes.
That's okay. And I believe you testified it was about 50 miles per hour or more, correct?
Because I was forced into a guesstimate, what I wanted to say at that time was that these cars didn't stop at the stop sign. So the thinking is, or the notion is, or what I observed is, if they had stopped at the stop sign, they wouldn't have been going that fast. So that's why I didn't have a guesstimate of the speed, because they went around the corner stop without stopping. So I don't know how fast they were going. They should have been going a lot less if they had stopped at the stop sign.
So now that car is gone and you had moved over to the bike lane, correct?
I moved back up onto the sidewalk out of the bike lane.
I see. Okay, and by this point, were the two women or two ladies that were walking towards you, were they past you already?
Yeah,
I see. Okay. Was there anybody else ahead of you at that time?
no, I was the only one walking back towards that direction. Everybody was more or less around the rec center, crossing the sidewalks farther back.
Okay. So then the second car comes in, correct? Yes?
Yes,
Okay. And I believe you testified it was another about 5 seconds. Is that correct?
yes,
Okay. And that car was going approximately 50 miles per hour and above as well. Is that correct?
yes.
Okay. And for this vehicle, can you describe what it looked, anything that you can remember of what it looked like?
Very nice, white, larger car going really fast. And there was a woman driving the car. She looked like she was having fun and looking back over her shoulder. And I was disappointed that I would see a grown woman not even looking forwards as she's driving fast. And she was looking back over her shoulder almost, I know my testimony, I used the word jovial, but she was just smiling. And so since she was looking back over her shoulder, I thought there must be another one coming. But I just was in such shock that I would see an adult driving that fast in that area at that time of early evening.
Okay.
That's why I just really wanted to see who was driving that car, because I thought it was not in that neighborhood, not at that time of day. It's just, sorry, it just really sickened me.
Understood. Okay. So you remember that this was a woman and you recall she was smiling. Is that correct?
And looking back over her shoulder, so she wasn't looking forward, but she was speeding forward.
Okay. And as I'm watching you, and I don't know if it's the cameras or reversed or backwards, was she looking to the over her shoulder on the right or to the left?
Over her right shoulder.
Over her right shoulder. Okay.
Yeah.
So she was, as she was driving facing towards you, correct?
She was driving, oh yes.
towards you.
Like this, yes, that's the right way to put it.
Okay, and so when she is driving towards you and she turned to her right, you were able to see her facial expression. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. Were you able to tell whether she was actually looking outside her right window or rear view? Do you have any idea of how she was able to look?
behind her, trying to see behind her car. I don't know what window she was focused on now.
Okay, and about how many seconds were you able to observe her in that moment?
Probably 2 or 3.
2 or 3 seconds, okay. And I believe you testified that she was not wearing a hat, is that correct?
I didn't know if she was wearing a hat or not. If she was, I wouldn't see it because of the frame of the window.
I see.
I just remember seeing her hair because I just really wanted to focus on the face and the hair. I just really wanted to know who that was driving that car like that.
So you saw her hair, you know it was a woman, you saw that she was smiling. What color was the hair that you observed?
It's like dirty blonde-ish hair.
So we're in the second, you hadn't seen the second vehicle, and you testified that you saw the woman, the face or the head, was it approximately 2 seconds?
Of her face?
Yeah.
Probably 2 to 3 seconds.
2 to 3 seconds.
Because I stood there and just, I saw her coming, I heard her coming, and I just watched her go all the way past me.
Okay, and as she went past you, were there any other vehicles that were passing alongside her?
Not alongside her, no.
None, okay. All right, so she passed you, and then I understand a third vehicle went past you, correct?
I heard another vehicle coming, and at that point I realized, I guess they're all racing each other. It was another, what I thought was a nice car, but I did not look to see the person at that point. I just wanted to get back to my car.
Understood, okay. And you said the first car was white, second car was white, third car. Do you have any recollection of what?
No, I don't.
Okay,
I thought it was all 3 white cars, but repeating myself, it was 4 years ago. But I thought they were all 3 white cars. I just remember them being nicer cars.
okay. And this third car, was it passing about the same speed as the other 2 vehicles ahead?
I would say so.
So going to the third vehicle, after the third vehicle passed, you said you walked over to the corner intersection, is that right?
Yes, because the sidewalk goes to the corner and then you turn left to go back down to my car.
Okay, and what was that intersection?
That's Lindero and Triunfo.
And about how many seconds was it from the time the third car passed you and the time you got to that corner? Just your best estimate of time.
Maybe 10, 15 seconds.
Oh, okay, not even a minute. Okay,
I don't think so.
very quickly. Okay, so were you, was it a regular walk or a brisk walk, or you recall how you got there?
I mean, I was probably walking between a normal and a brisk.
Understood, okay.
By that time, I realized it was going to be dark and I didn't want to be out. By the time I got to my car, it was going to be dark, so I didn't want to be out in the dark.
Understood, okay, so you got to that corner, and was it when you got to the corner that you started hearing the
Yes.
sirens?
Yes,
That was the first time you started hearing it, correct?
yes.
Okay, were you stopped when you heard it, or was it that was when you started hearing it?
When I saw them coming towards or going to be passing me, and they were passing me, I stopped and watched because then I realized something had happened and I could not believe how many services were coming. Like I said, sheriffs, paramedics, police, I think fire engines, it was a lot of service vehicles. And then I just,
Okay, so you stopped for a moment to watch all of that. About how long could you estimate, how long?
probably between 20 and 30 seconds because I stood there and watched them continue down to the corner and towards where the collision had probably happened. I didn't know. I just, I had just seen racing cars, and then, less than a minute later, I see all these services passing me towards where the cars were driving fast.
And you just said a moment ago, it was Rebecca. How do you know for certain it was Rebecca?
After a long time, I wanted to see if I would recognize her face.
Okay.
And it was on the news, it was very much on the news.
How did you determine that it was Rebecca that you saw that night?
Because the accident was on the news and it was her name and I recognized the face.
Okay, so then, you could see then, when you saw Rebecca's face,
In the car.
this was the same face that you saw in the car that day?
Yes.
I see. Okay, so I'm gonna just, not trying to make it difficult, I just wanna make it very clear for the record, okay, of what your recollection is. Then, as you sit here today, then you say for certain that the woman that you saw in the vehicle that was in the second car, that was white. The face that you saw was that of Rebecca Grossman, because you saw her face later on in the news. Is that true?
Yes.
So what I did, I'll represent to you, I went to Google Earth. I typed in the intersection of Windero Canyon and Triunfo Canyon, and I tried to be as accurate as possible about putting a little green circle or oval where the general location of where you put the green X on that exhibit 84. So can you see it on the screen?
Yes.
All right. Does this, where I placed that green circle, give a fair approximation of where you were when you personally observed what you testified to today with respect to those racing vehicles?
Yes.
Okay. And how about the lighting conditions at the time you saw all of this occur? Describe that for us.
It wasn't dusk yet, so it was early, enough in the evening to where it was still light out. But by the time I got back to my car, there's mountains out there on the other side. If you look on the other side of Wrongful, all those tall mountains, the sun had set by that time. By the time I got back to my car, so it was still light when I saw the cars, but it goes down fast out there.
And then so, because you had mentioned about a location where you parked your car. So what I pulled up, this is literally Google Earth, live and in person, and I put in Windero Canyon and Triunfo Canyon. So let me zoom out. Can you direct us, if you can see it, if it's depicted on here, the general location of where you parked your car?
So the red tiled buildings in that parking lot between the boats and the red tiled.
Okay, so I've zoomed in.
So go down about, right there. Between the last tiled building and those boats I parked, right.
Okay, so where I'm moving my pointer,
Correct.
do you see, obviously it's not exact, let me make it bigger. You see where I placed the red circle on this Google Earth snapshot?
Yes.
Okay, does that generally and fairly depict where you parked your vehicle on the
Yes.
date of the crash?
Yes.
So I will save this. I'll have my first exhibit as exhibit 1. So let me publish my next photo, or my next exhibit. This will be a photograph. Do you know who is depicted in this photograph?
Rebecca Grossman.
And is this the person who you saw driving that one of the vehicles who you described as racing and revving their engines?
Yes.
All right. And I believe you described the vehicle that she was driving as a white car, a nicer car. Is that generally correct?
Yes.
All right, let me publish my next exhibit. This will be exhibit 4. And these are 3 photographs. So there's photograph 1, there's photograph 2, and there's photograph 3. Do these photographs, strike that, does the vehicle contained within these photographs look familiar to you?
Yes.
And why?
The side view of it looks familiar. So that was me trying to describe a larger.
So does this exhibit that I've marked as exhibit 4, do these 3 photographs depict the vehicle that you saw Rebecca Grossman driving that you testified to for today?
Yes, but I do want to note, I didn't know what brand of car it was. And just because I'm not familiar with cars at that expense. So I didn't know if it was, I just knew it was a larger, very nice car. I couldn't say that, yes, it was a Mercedes or a BMW or a Tesla.
As you were out on your walk at that time, is what you told us earlier, what initially caught your attention was the sound of cars that you thought were racing?
Yes.
And Ms. Curry, I'll be very brief. As you were walking on Triumphal Canyon towards Lindero, what were the traffic conditions like on Lindero? Were they light, moderate, heavy? I said Lindero, I meant Triumphal Canyon.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
there were more people than cars, but it was moderate, you know,
Okay.
it wasn't, I would say there was more people than cars, but it was just normal amount of cars going up and down, you know, considering the restaurants there, and then there's a multitude of homes, people going home after work.
As you were walking towards Lindero, had you previously walked past the intersection of Triumphal and Saddle Mountain?
Yes,
And during that time, from Saddle Mountain all the way down to Lindero, until you got to where you saw the white cars speeding, did you notice any other vehicles seemingly driving excessively fast on Triumphal?
just the ones I've mentioned, no
Okay.
others, no.
And so at no point in time, at least from the time you left or walked past Saddle Mountain all the way until you got near Triumphal, had you seen a black or dark color SUV speeding? Is that a fair statement?
I do not recall, because I had said I was in the bike lane and I heard it coming, so I focused on jumping back up into the sidewalk.
Okay, but that first car that passed you was also a white vehicle, is that what you testified to?
That's what I believed I saw, yes.
So the 3 vehicles that you believe were traveling at an excessive rate of speed all appear to be white in color.
That's what I remembered at the
Okay.
time, but I didn't see anything else, but I wasn't also focusing on every car that drove by because I wanted to get out of the bike lane.
And the 3
But when I
vehicles,
stopped after the first car went by is when I wanted to make sure I saw who was driving a car too fast.
and the 3 vehicles that you described all appear to be about 5 seconds apart from one another.
Not more than 5.
So is 5 your best estimate?
Between 3 and 5, I thought that's what I said.
Okay. And I thought I heard you mention that of at least the last 2 white cars, you did not believe that they stopped for the stop sign at Lindero. Is that what I heard you say?
That's what you heard me say, yes.
Ms. Curry, so prior to September 29th, 2020, the date of our incident, you had walked in this same location before. Is that a fair statement?
Yes,
And you had seen vehicles driving on Lindero and Triangle Canyon.
yes,
And how long have you been a licensed driver in California?
for 50 years.
And based on, your driving experience and your familiarity with that location that we've been talking about today, did you believe that the speed of those vehicles you've testified to today was appropriate for that location?
I did not feel it was appropriate for that location, no.
How come?
Because it was at a recreational center. So that would, to me, be the same as when you're driving by a school. You slow down, whether it's posted. I didn't know if it was or was not posted out there to slow down when you get in front of the rec center, but the rec center had a multitude of people enjoying the rec center. There's dozens of pickleball courts, there's the swimming pool, people are going in and out of the rec center. It's after dinner family walking time. It's human nature to go out on walks, is particularly, there are a lot of people around the rec center, enjoying the rec center, making use of it.
And when these vehicles finally passed you, did they continue to accelerate or did they slow down?
They continued. That's
At the
why
same rate? Here, I'm sorry. Did they continue at the same rate of speed as you personally observed?
they went by me, it seems like they were going the same, like I had said, they did not slow down. And that's why I kind of couldn't believe my eyes and my ears. I thought that they would slow down as they were approaching a place that was a crosswalk from the neighborhood over to the rec center. So they did not slow down when they were driving by me. Nor did I hear them accelerate, but I did not hear them or see them slow down.
Did you see any brake lights illuminate?
No,
Ms. Curry, when I was questioning you earlier, I thought we went over each vehicle, and I thought I heard you testify that you couldn't recall the color of the third vehicle. Do you remember that?
yeah, I thought I saw 3 white cars. I don't recall seeing a black car, which I've been asked about a black car. I don't recall seeing a black car.
Your Honor, next witness will be Rose Wiltshire.
By video.
By video, yes. Yes.
Good morning.
Morning,
Can you please state your name for the record?
Rose Wiltshire.
So, this case concerns an auto versus pedestrians collision that occurred on September 29th, 2020. Do you understand that?
Yes,
And it resulted in the death of Mark and Jacob Iskander. Were you aware of that?
yes,
And the crash involved Rebecca Grossman. Did you know that?
yes.
What year did you first meet Rebecca Grossman?
As close as I can remember, it's at least 20 years ago.
And so before the crash, would you consider her a friend, or was it just, as you described, just a business associate?
Pretty much just a business associate.
Now, how would you describe your relationship with Rebecca Grossman after the fatal crash?
Well, I didn't have a lot of communication actually with her after that. Everything just kind of went silent. till the contact I got from her.
And when you're saying the contact you got from her, are you referring to certain texts that the two of you exchanged?
Yes,
The text continues and reads, I do take accountability that I turned my head to the right probably 1 or 2 seconds longer than I should have when I saw a woman crashing on rollerblades on the right side of the road. I did not know it that night, but it was the mom. This grabbed my attention, and it probably would anyone else's. Did I read that correctly?
yes,
And this is information and that Rebecca Grossman specifically texted to you.
correct.
Did she ever share with you any additional information as it relates to turning her head to the right for 1 or 2 seconds longer than she should have, beyond what she wrote here?
Nothing other than what's here.
And when you gave testimony, what was the sum and substance of your testimony?
The text, one of the text messages,
Was that really the nature and extent of it?
yes,
You didn't offer any thoughts or opinions about how the crash occurred or what happened, did you?
no,
You have no personal knowledge in that regard, is that correct?
correct.
So, all right. So we're gonna break, not for lunch only, we're gonna break for the day. And tomorrow, I'm gonna ask you to come at 9:45, we'll be starting at 10. Okay? Don't sleep in, but, come a little later. All right, you're not talking about the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else?